Welcome back, subscribers, and welcome new viewers. Okay, I'm going to be reading from my Saturn book, and this is going to be Saturn in aspect to the moon. So if you have your natal Saturn and moon opposing, conjunct, or squaring, those are the hardest aspects. Now, it doesn't mean that the sextile and trine, which are the easy, compatible aspects, aren't going to come into play, but most likely it is mainly for conjunct, opposing, and squaring. And I want to thank each and every one of you who has subscribed and likes, shares my videos, because every time you do that, it expands my my ability for people to view this and all of my videos on my channel, because they are in need just like you. And so thank you. And I also want to give a special thanks out to Pauline, who, because of her question that she sent me, is the reason why I am now going to be reading this Saturn aspect to the moon. And this is going to help not only Pauline, but each and every one of you. So thank you again, Pauline, so very much for that very important question. All right. Saturn in aspect to the moon. Moon-Saturn contacts have a poor reputation traditionally, although the classical Saturnian virtues of thrift and caution are usually linked with them. They are said to indicate a personality which is often sensitive to the point of morbidity, restriction, and inhibition, withdrawal, and difficulty in emotional expression, shyness, and lack of imagination. These qualities, which are generally associated with the afflictions of Saturn to the moon, are fairly awe-inspiring for what is a common enough contact. And although this description is accurate enough about many Moon-Saturn personalities, the contact may also be seen from a different and less depressive point of view. And I want to just quickly say too that some of you might have the aspect in just the house placement. So the opposition, square, or conjunct in just the house placement. And you might have it in just the zodiac sign. So you can have one or the other. A lot of times it's both, but some other times it's not, because we're each individual and our natal wheels are completely different. And so you might, if you have just either zodiac sign or just the house placement sign, you might agree with part of this and not all of it. Whereas the zodiac sign and house placement sign, you might see a lot of similarities, or most of it is correct for you. Okay, I just felt I needed to say that. Okay, thrift and caution are in the final analysis fairly uninteresting compensations for the unpleasant qualities usually linked with Moon-Saturn aspects. The moon has a variety of possible interpretations, which is fitting for her fluid and changeable nature. And moon is representative of emotions and mother, and Saturn is a representation of authority figure, like, for example, father. From a psychological point of view alone, there are many avenues of meaning, all of which are applicable to the moon's symbolism. There is some general agreement that she is, among other things, a symbol for the feminine half of the human psyche, the feeling nature, the sensual nature, the mother, the unconscious or dark aspect of a man's psyche. The archetype of the great lunar goddess in ancient mythology, who was also goddess of fertility and of the earth, still carries power today in the conscious expression of woman and the unconscious of man. And the language of symbolism and dreams, of moods and fantasy is also linked with the moon. She is also, on a more prosaic level, a symbol of one's childhood and of the roots from which the individual's character grows. She often describes in a clear and concise manner on the birth chart the nature of the atmosphere of early home life and the relationship with one's mother. In terms of behavior, the moon appears to be related to an individual's instinctive habit patterns, his natural unconscious manner of expression. The moon is the line of least resistance, and her qualities by sign and house and aspect are expressed most obviously in intimate emotional relationships and in those situations where instinct rather than conscious deliberation governs a man's actions. There is an old esoteric teaching that the sign in which the moon is placed in the present life corresponds to the sign in which the sun was placed in the past life. Oh. Okay, so what this author is saying is that if you believe in past lives, that your moon sign, zodiac sign, in this life could have been your sun sign in a past life or in your last life. That's interesting. And I would go out I'm going out on a limb here to say too, maybe, possibly, your moon sign could, I'm just getting for some of you, could be your grandfather's sun sign now, or even maybe your father's. It doesn't have to be, that's just as specific for some of you. I just putting that out there. This is rather simple and not very helpful for literal interpretation. We've not yet ascertained in a definitive way the validity of the concept of rebirth and have no real information on the astrological patterns which might be associated with it. But there is some value in interpreting this teaching in a symbolic sense because the moon represents a link with one's childhood and one's heredity and roots, and usually suggests an area where the need for security and a sense of continuity with the past is obviously expressed. In some ways, the moon symbolizes what the parents have been and were. The longing is greatest for, and okay, wait, that doesn't sound right. Let me start that sentence over again. In some ways, the moon symbolizes what the parents have been and were. The longing is greatest, where the longing is greatest for an emotional rapport and instinctual closeness, which will replace the comfort of the ancient umbilical tie. That's a mouthful. That's very deep. That's very deep. Let me say that one more time. In some ways, the moon symbolizes what the parents have been and where the longing is greatest for an emotional rapport and instinctual closeness, which will replace the comfort of the ancient umbilical tie. There is the suggestion with Moon Saturn contacts, including the soft aspects in this case, which would be trine and sextile. Soft aspects mean compatible aspects, easy aspects, whereas again, conjunct, opposing, and square are hard. The mother is frequently undemonstrative or a disappointment in some way. Many Moon Saturn people carry a well-defined stamp of emotional close-fistedness, which infers a long past of learning to control the feelings, beginning at an age where feelings, freely expressed, are the only outlet a child possesses for communication. There's often a brooding loneliness about this contact, and even with the apparent stability and steadfastness which are typical of the easier aspects, there is an aloofness and isolation which is not easily broken. There is frequently a cool and apparently efficient exterior presented, although the efficiency is questionable if the aspects are close, because there is often compulsive defensiveness which interferes with the practical instincts. Moon-Saturn contacts often concur with the sort of personality which likes to present itself as practical, but this is usually a substitution of values of the kind which Saturn is so good at. The practicality is usually developed because the individual cannot express himself in any other way. Often a deep loneliness and needfulness is present with Moon Saturn, particularly for the security of emotional bonds which only a family with its sense of blood relationships and continuity can provide. There is a need for roots, for tradition, and for the physical structure of a family unit. Usually this emphasis on the structure carries an inherent disappointment with it for the family when the moon is closely aspected to Saturn, can often offer nothing except structure. The early home life is of primary importance in the shaping of the Moon Saturn personality characteristics. Both of these planets are related to the vertical, vertical axis of the chart with its associations of parental influence. And both planets are also connected with aspects of the unconscious and of behavior patterns which are built up over past experience. Both parents are represented by this contact and not in the kindest of fashions. The suggestion of a business before pleasure attitude is strong. Sometimes there is the atmosphere of a strict morality linked with religious viewpoints. This contact is common among people who have been subjected to the more dogmatic religious systems with their emphasis on a harsh and duty-conscious deity. The parents, often through no fault of their own, are a burden or a disappointment to the child. What this kind of pattern does psychologically varies depending upon whether the individual is a man or a woman. It also varies because the bias of the rest of the chart may suggest the usual wide spectrum of apparent expressions of Saturn, ranging from the close and withdrawn emotional temperament one might expect to the apparently effusive and sentimental temperament which Saturn so easily demonstrates as compensation. But whatever his external manifestation, Saturn always inclines toward the development of strength through isolation, and the individual with Moon Saturn is usually cut off from both his literal roots and his psychic roots, and must develop his own sense of continuity and emotional security. Absolutely true, absolutely true. I'm saying this from experiential sense because I do have my sun and, my Saturn and Moon oppose each other. And I definitely have this, absolutely. He cannot retreat to the pleasant memories of childhood because they are frequently unpleasant. And he also cannot depend upon others emotionally to provide a nest in which he can bury himself so that he does not have to grow. Absolutely. When he relies on his instincts, they usually let him down. And he often finds at some point in his life that he must burn his bridges behind him if he is to develop into a mature human being. Absolutely, absolutely. And for me, my South Node, burn the bridges, also those very words are in my South Node as well. The structure of the family and the rules of good behavior which served him in the past as a reason for being are no longer satisfactory, and the individual is given an opportunity to develop the conscious decision-making aspect of his nature more fully, symbolized by the sun, because the line of least resistance is blocked. It might be said that when Moon-Saturn contacts are present on the birth chart, it's time for the individual to begin to become a conscious, thinking entity. The total structure of his psyche will usually not permit him to fall back on his feeling nature for his direction or his behavior. The moon on a man's chart has some bearing on his choice in a female partner, since this is affected by the temperament of his mother and the kind of relationship he had with her. As a symbol of his own female side, the moon usually suggests those qualities which are likely to be projected upon a wife or lover. The moon is one of the keys to the attributes which personalize the anima figure or anima. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I should know, but I don't. Figure in a man's unconscious psyche. Moon-Saturn contacts suggest that some difficulties are to be expected both in a man's relationship with his own unconscious and in his relationships with women as the living symbol of his female self. The feeling side of his nature is likely to be forcibly clamped down, and in place of feelings, which are likely to be a rather powerful and not always wholesome energy. The man may express sentiment of a kind which is peculiarly characteristic of Moon-Saturn contacts and which is always well behaved. The feeling nature is not consistently well behaved any more than the moon is consistently full or new. It is the totality of feeling experience which is symbolized by the moon, and it is this totality which is such a threat to the Moon-Saturn man. Because the feeling nature is rarely permitted acknowledgement, let alone expression, the Moon-Saturn man is likely to attract women of a particularly instinctual and dominant nature into his life. And the voracious lunar goddess, flanked by her bestial symbols, which has been denied integration in his own psyche, will usually appear as a woman in his personal life. Just as he is inwardly at the mercy of his moods and feelings, one of the typical characteristics of Moon-Saturn, he is also at the mercy of his women through the vulnerability and childishness of his feeling nature. The medieval astrologers stated that the moon's application to Saturn on a man's birth chart boded no good in terms of marriage. And it is possible that in some ways they were correct. One of the most important opportunities offered by this contact on a man's chart is the possibility of coming to terms with his feeling nature, because he generally suffers disappointment through women and consequently finds it useless to attempt to project his feeling nature onto them and live this side of his psyche out vicariously. He must experience it himself, and it is through this means that a man can, in the end, free himself finally from the grip and control of his own past. He becomes what is called twice born through this confrontation with an understanding of his feeling nature, and it is possible for him to become closer to a whole person than the ordinary man whose female half is always expressed through the women in his life. Moon-Saturn contacts are important on a man's chart, although all too often the man will attempt to sidestep the challenge and bury himself in practical affairs which take his mind off the loneliness and vulnerability which constantly nag at him from within. Saturn's gift of independence usually follows on the heels of failure or disappointment, because only failure appears to be sufficient to cause a person to question himself or to develop the necessary inner wisdom and strength. With the Moon-Saturn contacts, he offers the possibility of true emotional true emotional independence. I don't know if you can hear my stomach's growling. That's why I was smiling a little bit, and it caught me off guard. Sorry about that. A quality or experience which is relatively rare. The security of family ties is an illusory one, and it is often very dangerous to assume that one has the right, because of blood ties, to command emotional support from others. Parents can die, partners can leave, and children can grow up, and the person with Moon-Saturn is generally courting pain and emotional courting pain and disappointment if he seeks to bind these external things to himself by emotional need. As he builds his own inner stability and taps the resources of his creative and intuitive side, he generally finds that he does not have to demand the affection of others. That's beautiful. This is offered to him freely because he has something to offer in return. A whole person. How outstanding for all of you men who have this aspect. Moon-Saturn contacts are often associated with ill health in charts of women. And this appears to be true as far as it goes. There's often a propensity, especially with the conjunction, toward chronic illness of one kind or another. This illness, however, is frequently functional rather than organic and is sometimes of the kind which Freud, in the days of the infancy of psychology, which is still in its childhood, called hysterical. Emotions which are not able to be expressed freely through ordinary channels are often short-circuited and take their toll on the body. Moon-Saturn illnesses are often a symbol of the frustrated feelings of a person who, because of background, a sense of duty, and a fear of rejection or humiliation, will not express herself in an open and spontaneous way. Sometimes it is emotional disappointment which is expressed through the physical body, but in many cases it is the feeling nature rather than the body which is the source of the difficulty. The moon is particularly important on a woman's chart because the feeling nature is often the most developed function of consciousness and is the channel by which the woman usually expresses herself. It is often the sun, as a symbol of maleness, which is unconscious in a woman's psyche, and the directed will and desire for recognition and self-expression are often projected upon the partner and lived out through him. In the same way, a man will often live out his unrecognized feelings through his more emotionally expressive partner. A Moon-Saturn contact is often suggestive of difficulty in expression through this more important channel of feeling. This can cut a woman off from her own femininity and from acceptance of herself as a woman. Absolutely, absolutely. I just had a flashback of my own self in childhood. I was a tomboy. Total and complete tomboy. This is sometimes connected with the relationship to the mother in childhood, which may be productive of feelings of rejection, isolation, and inadequacy. A woman with Moon-Saturn must generally create her own psychic space and needs to discover her femininity apart from its associations with her mother's image and role. Absolutely, absolutely. And for me, I wasn't able to even begin the process until my Saturn return, which was, for me, age 31. In one way or another, Moon-Saturn contacts in the chart of women often suggest that Jung called a mother complex, and although this term has been misused and overused in many ways, nevertheless the mother, or the woman's image of the mother, is a formidable energy which must be dealt with carefully. The two extremes of the overly instinctual woman, who has no function other than childbearer and cook, and the overly aggressive woman, who resents the biological bias of her own body, are both related to this idea of the mother complex and to the aspects of the moon and Saturn. For women as well as men, the opportunity is offered to emotional freedom when the moon is in aspect to Saturn. Although this means different things to women and men, nevertheless, the opportunity is basically the same. There are few women who are truly themselves as independent individuals. There are many who are attempting to overcompensate with apparent freedom, but few who have come fully to terms in a conscious way with their own femaleness and with the mother who stands psychologically as a symbol of that femaleness. It is the experience and understanding of this not mysterious. It is the experience and understanding of this mystery which is possible for a woman with a Moon-Saturn contact. This is a far more important offering than thrift or caution in terms of the development of the whole psyche. Wow, this was a big one. And again, thank you, Pauline, for enabling me to be able to make this video reading. And I'm sure others out there, if they could, they would thank you as well. Okay. And I want to thank each and every one of you, viewers, subscribers, again, who subscribe, who have subscribed, and who like and share my videos, because there are others absolutely who are in need and searching for this reading and other readings from my channel, who will be able to find it thanks to you. Okay, again, until next time, all right, bye. Hope all of you are well, and I love to hear all of your questions and comments. Okay, until next time.